Okay.
Right.
Okay.
All right there. Hello, Papa Mickey. Nice
Well,
to see
hello. Hello, Matthew. Nice to be seen.
you. Uh, right on. Well, we're here today for our second session of the Wisdom series with
hmm
Atma.
hmm
And we're kind of following up where we left off on the last session, which was really a story of how you have arrived at this place in your own life
hmm
where you're doing this work with not only with the plants and with this medicine, but with the people who you meet along the way and who are involved in seeking out this type of wisdom, hence the name of the series.
Ta-da.
And today, would love to really talk a little bit more about the plants themselves and some of the traditions that have really helped establish the medicinal qualities of these plants, but also that have given, the modern world even a sense of where to meet these plants as a medicine. Would love to hear a little bit more about what you're working with and how it's been worked with over time in the ways that many, many, many of us are only just stumbling onto for the very first time now.
Okay. Well, I'll start by saying that since time immemorial, when humans appeared on Earth, the plants were already here. So how did medicinal plants start being used? Well, somebody got sick and somebody wanted to help them. So through a long time of exploration, finding out which plant was which. The interesting thing about the plant world are there are some plants which are actually doctors. Other plants aren't. Like the grass that grows on your lawn is not a doctor. But on the other hand, plants from the Amazon, which is where I did my apprenticeship, there are plants that are definitely doctors. I could name them off. You've dieted a few of them. I've dieted them all. And each is a doctor for a specific thing. Bobinsana is a doctor for your emotions. Uh, Chiricsanango is a doctor for your central nervous system. Ayuma is a power plant, which is dieted to get energy, and so on and so forth. Um, so what happened for we humans was it started out somebody was sick, somebody needed to help them. Through time, they found some plants because that's what they had was plants, and they started administering these plants. But tradition comes from a long, long uh, time, thousands of years of finding out what plant does what. But really, you need to enter into a harmonious relationship with the spirit of that plant to actually be able to use this plant or to be used by this plant in a way that is beneficial. Otherwise, it's like singing a Nicaro in ceremony. But if you're not one with the Icaro, well, it's just a song. No matter how well you pronounce it, it's just a song. There needs to be something which is a deeper connection, and not just with the plant, but with the spirit of the plants. As I said, all plants have spirits, as everything does. So traditions evolved. Plant medicine's traditions evolved. The first recorded history of plants being used, psychoactive plants being used to help human beings was in the Vedas, written 10,000 years ago in India. And there's a part of the Vedas which is not very well known, and it deals with soma, which they called it soma. But now, in these days, in India, they don't know what soma is anymore. It was lost. There is conjecture that soma was actually Syrian root because during those times, back in the days of Persia and the Middle East, and Persia was also part of Afghanistan. Afghanistan was also part of Persia, and the Persians came into India. It's a history lesson. they use Syrian rue. In fact, they still use Syrian rue, but they don't use it as a psychoactive medicine anymore. Now they burn it in the mosques and the temples because it smells good.
Hmm.
And it's known for its cleaning properties. If someone's getting married, they'll burn Syrian rue for good luck and to clean the whole thing. But of course, with psychoactive doctor plants, there's much more to it than that. So various traditions have come up depending on where on earth these people lived. Now the first recorded one was in the Ganges Valley, but that's been gone, Soma. Now, a bunch of thousand years later, there was uh, the mushroom tradition. Well, the mushroom tradition, there's actually two of them. There's the mushroom tradition from Siberia, Mongolia, Russia. That's one. The other mushroom tradition is from Mexico, Guatemala, and Central America. Completely different mushrooms. One from Siberia is Amanita muscaria, which is poisonous. So for them, over time, a long time, they found out how to administer this plant because you just can't take the plant. Also, you know, if you're doing this traditionally, you really have to spend a lot of time to learn, or better said, to receive how to do this.
Hmm.
I'll get into that later. But so with Amanita muscaria, used by Mongolian Siberian shamans, they would obviously pick the mushroom, and then they would cook it into a tea, and then they would drink it themselves, and then they would let it sit in their body for some time, and then they would pee it out into a glass. And that glass of pee was given to the person that they were working with. And that person would drink the pee, not actually eat the mushroom. And that would activate the psyche of the person and allow that person to be receptive to what the healer was about to do and was doing.
Hmm.
That's how they did that. And
Wow.
they still do that because traditions, the ones that are alive, are still very much alive. Now, in Mexico, the mushroom that they used was cubensis, which is very common now. And I'm sure that people in North America that are using mushrooms are familiar with what cubensis is. Now, in Mexico, there was also a mushroom tradition, but it was used differently. They would pick the mushrooms, sometimes eat them fresh, and sometimes pickle them.
Hmm.
You'd have pickled mushrooms.
How about
And
that?
and in both traditions, there are songs, icaros, that go work hand in hand with the substance that you're administering. Why? Because the plant was a doctor plant. The person that was administering the plant entered into a harmonious relationship with the plant and received from the plant vibrationally how to transmit this energy to facilitate a cure or to help somebody learn. So it's all interconnected. This is one of the things that makes old traditions special.
Hmm.
It's very intact and it's very specific. And the traditions that are alive are that way. Of course, there's lots of variants of that, but the old traditional way is just like that.
Hmm.
So in Mexico, they would give the person a fresh mushroom, and then they would, after some time, as the mushroom activated itself, the person, the curandero or curandera, would also eat the mushroom. Now they would enter into a relationship, an energetic relationship, empowered by the psychoactive mushroom to facilitate the healing. Of course, healing is not just one thing. It's physical, emotional, mental, spiritual, all of that. So that's how the mushrooms were used and still being used in Mexico and Siberia. Although in Mexico, about 80 years ago, Marie Sabrina, who was a Mexican indigenous person, she died. And she didn't have any real apprentices. So with her, a lot of these icaros, these songs were gone. It doesn't mean that people didn't eat mushrooms, as you know full well. People eat mushrooms every day, but they don't know what they're doing. They just eat them. Okay, you have a nice experience, whatever. It's for experience. But if you want to use a psychoactive plant for healing, then it needs to be based in tradition. And because the tradition will be the platform which the whole um, healing process unfolds. Without the platform, yeah, sometimes it's hit and miss. But if you're working in a tradition, it's always right.
Mm.
And so that's mushrooms. Now there's others too. There is Syrian rue, as I said, but Syrian rue is no longer used that way. Although there are people that do ingest Syrian rue and do whatever they do, go to raves, walk up a mountain, flop around in the desert, whatever.
Hmm.
This is not tradition. This is something else, which is mostly falls under the umbrella of recreational use. Of course, some people will be finding out it's not actually that recreational.
Right.
um, and then you go along, and there is mescaline. It's predominantly a tradition from at one time the southern U.S., Texas, Arizona, and Mexico. And it's a very old tradition too. In the first episode, I talked about how I read a book about them. I went and found the Huicholes, who were at that time and still are the only people that are holding that tradition intact. There are others, of course, people can go into the desert and pick peyote and eat it, but that's not the same thing. And what happens isn't the same thing either. Because when you're working within a tradition, there is the curandero. We can call him a curandero, you can call him a maestro, whatever you want. But he has received the skills and taken the full time to do that so that he can help facilitate the healing. But it's not just about healing, or healing is a big thing. The maestro is a friend, but not a friend. A maestro is a comfort, and it can be a torture. Maestro is many things, but if it's a traditional maestro, he is 100% committed to the people that he's working with. It's just that way. It's not a part-time job. It's not like, ooh, I got to take care of my empire. Please do this, and then we'll do ceremony. It's a 24/7 commitment. And that's why it takes a long time to become a maestro. In my case, it was a 10-year apprenticeship in the Amazon. And then 2 years working in a healing center for indigenous people with my maestro, until my maestro turned to me and said, well, you're a maestro, go serve your people. So I believe that that's how it's always worked in traditions, that there is a maestro, there is obviously the spirit and the plant, which works through the maestro, which is transmitted to the apprentice. And if the apprentice isn't in a rush and takes lots of time, then it can be a full transmission. And then now we have another maestro. And that's the way traditions stay alive, some of them for a long time. So with mescaline, there are two main plants with mescaline. One is called San Pedro, which was the name the Spanish gave it because they wanted to Christianize the people that were using it, but its real name was Huachuma. And it's a psychoactive cactus, and the people use it all sorts of ways. But what happened in that instance was, well, when the Spanish came, they found the use of Huachuma anti their program of turning everybody into Christians.
Got it.
So they rounded up all the maestros and killed them. So Huachuma, which is used today, is not the original old tradition. But what happened during that time was there was a tribe of Quechuans, who were known as the Caro tribe, and they went above 14,000 feet in the Andes for 200 years and lived up there. And they developed the coca leaf tradition, which is another plant. And they didn't come down below 14,000 feet for 200 years. And finally, one of them came down and noticed, the Spanish have gone. And so they came down, and then they started working with the people. And, the people hadn't forgotten that Wachuma was one of their medicines, but they didn't know the traditional ways of using it. So the Keros, who didn't also know the traditional ways of using it because they had become coqueros, mixed the two. So they would use Coca ceremonies and Wachuma ceremonies and mix them up, and it became obviously an earth-based ceremony, which is relatively new, 400 or 500 years. But in the big picture of medicine work, that's a very short time. And so what happens today, if you go to a Wachuma ceremony and they say it's a traditional Wachuma ceremony, it is, but it's kind of like a baby tradition, right? Now, that's one. The other is the peyote tradition, which is another cactus. Its real name is hikuri. And for that, it's also a long apprenticeship. In Huichol, apprenticeship is in increments of 5. You firstly need to get sponsored by a Huichol. Then you commit for 5 years. And in that 5 years, you're the low man on the rung of the ladder, and you perform all the services that are required of that first 5 years. Once you've completed 5 years, now you commit again for 5 more. And Huichol is slow. It usually takes about 40 years of re-upping and committing to what they do, which is it's very ritualistic. The substance is very strong, and you have to do pilgrimages. You go to pilgrimages, but it's not like going to pilgrimages to churches. You're going to pilgrimages to natural, sacred places, waterfalls and this and that. And you're making a lot of offerings, which you have to make. When you traditionally go on a pilgrimage, I did many, you can spend a week before making effigies of all sorts of things. Firstly, all the people whose prayers you're carrying with you. And then of all the different animals and all the children and all the grandparents. So I would have a bag with about 100 different effigies in it, not made out of clay, and then you make them looking like whatever you're going to make the offerings for. And you have to have 100 candles. So you have your bags with 100 effigies, 100 candles, and you go pilgrimaging. You find a peyote. You eat peyote all the time, continually. You eat peyote during the day, all day. At night, you sit by a fire, you make camp, and then you make peyote tea, and you drink peyote tea all night long. So obviously, it's demanding, and sleep is a rare creature. So that's how that tradition is still intact. Now, in the Huichol peyote tradition, when the Spanish came, they felt very threatened by them as well, and so they started hunting them. But they couldn't get them all because, well, they were shamans. They knew how to move undetected through the world if need be. Also, as a Huichol, every year this pilgrimage is required. And this is from the west coast of Mexico in Nayarit, San Blas area, where their pueblos are, all the way to the center of Mexico where the desert is. That's where the peyote grows. And they had to do that walking 400 or 500 miles back and forth every year. Now they were being hunted by the Spanish. So they walked at night. And they continue that tradition to this day. They still do that. I know, I did it. So what happened was the Spanish, well, they couldn't hunt them all. So they thought, well, let's build churches. But instead of putting crosses on the churches, let's put peyote buttons. But that didn't work either because the shamans went, nah, you're not going to fool us.
Wow, wily.
There's wisdom in this. So in the end, the Spanish left, and the peyote tradition still carries on today intact. It's one of the few that are still intact. Of course, as I said, with Chuma, the San Pedro tradition is intact. But what happened was in Peru and Central America, where they use this, they developed the mesa. Mesa, mesa, the altar. And in the altar, they had all the different objects of the white and the black. And it was not really even. There was a lot more effigies and symbols of black than of white. And the people that practiced what they call San Pedro shamanism, which, of course, in my view, is brujeria, but it's very lightweight brujeria. They work both sides of the fence. So they would offer healings, but they would also offer services of cursing and killing people. Both sides. Of course, this is not a recommended tradition for you, young man.
Got it.
or anybody listening to this. No, look at it. I actually, at one time, I traveled in the world serving medicine. And I went to Africa one time. And I went to Africa to offer a Nuriel dieta, which I did. And in that dieta, one of the people that came was working with a Sangoma. A Sangoma is an African medicine man, a voodoo guy. And she said, I'm working with this man, da, 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 and I told him about you, and he really wants to meet you. So I said, oh, okay. Bring him this afternoon, right? One afternoon. Excuse me, I'll just have a little sip here. So she brought him. And I was sitting in a chair, and they came walking across the yard, and I stood up, and I went to greet him. And right away, he did a little brujo trick. And I stopped and I went, hey, you don't have to do that. He went, oh, you caught that? I said, yeah. I said, you don't need to do that stuff. And he went, wait a minute. And he walked back a few paces and turned around and started talking to the sky. He talked to the sky for a while. And then he came back and he said, well, my spirits tell me that I need to talk to you. I said, okay, well, sit down then. Let's have a conversation. So he said, can I ask you some questions? I said, yes. He said, how many spirits do you work with? I said, I work with one spirit. And he went, oh my God. He said, I work with 17. I went, okay, you know. And then he said, well, how do you work with your spirit? I said, I do whatever it asks me to do. He went, oh. I said, how about you? He said, well, for me, everything is negotiation. I negotiate with them. They want something from me and I want something from them, and we come to terms, and then we do that. And then he said, well, what's your work? I said, my work is to help people. We can call it healing, we can call it learning. I'm just out and out to facilitate that, and that's it. He went, really? He said, I use my medicine to help people and to curse people both. He said, I've killed 5 people. He was very proud of it.
Wow.
I went, oh, wow, okay. And then he walked back off again for a minute and talked to this guy. And he came back and he says, my spirits tell me that I need to work with you. And I said, that's not going to happen. I said, I agreed to meet you today, not for you, for this woman who's sitting here. And I said, no, that's it. And he said, okay. We said, one more question. How do you work? I said, I sing songs from the spirit world. He goes, well, I do too. So I said, well, let me hear one of your songs. So he sang this real twisty song energetically. And I was like, yeah. And he said, now let me hear one of yours. And I sang an Icaro from the realms of Nuriel, and he closed his eyes and got all blissed out. And then when he opened his eyes, I was sitting there and I said, well, that's it. We met. Very nice to meet you, but you can't come back. He said, will you come to my place and work with my people? I go, no. I don't do that. I work specifically for a reason within this tradition that I work in. It's not the tradition that you're working in. So people are free. First and foremost, they should be free to choose how you want to spend your precious time. And it's precious. And if you want to do that, go ahead. But that's time that you'll never get back. So I'm very cognizant of time. So I never compromise on that, which I received through my traditional apprenticeship with my old maestro. He was the same. He would never compromise. He got a lot of grief from certain other medicine men from the Amazon because he was training me. He was like, you're telling him all the secrets. What are you doing? He said, no. He's a Honibo. He's a natural born healer. Way better than you guys.
Uh-huh.
He should. You know Benji. At that time, he was strong.
Hmm.
So it went like that.
Hmm.
Now, the tradition that I'm working in tradition of Nuriel. Nuriel is a lineage. It was held by Mawas for some time. Mawa is actually a family name. I did a traditional apprenticeship, a real traditional apprenticeship, which doesn't exist anymore. Some of the people that you now drink with, they didn't do a traditional apprenticeship. They'll tell you they did, but that wasn't so. I know because I was already a maestro before they even showed up.
Hmm.
So I know, but I'm not going to go into that too much. It's certainly not going to take names. But I work within that tradition. So it's a traditional lineage. Nuriel is a spirit, but it's a beneficial spirit that is out and out to help mankind. It needs to be received, but you only receive it through doing a traditional apprenticeship. Otherwise, it's make believe. If it's not a traditional apprenticeship, then what is it? It's a story that can be made in your head for whatever reasons. But the tradition is intact. Why? I'm sitting here telling you about it. And I'm not trying to convince you, but the work speaks for itself. So if you talk to people who have worked with me, they keep coming back. There's a reason for that. And they're also learning. There's a reason for that. I don't own any of it, but I'm very privileged to be able to work with it. That's the tradition. That is traditional medicine. That's how it goes. Of course, once again, excuse me, another shot of water. Before we started this talk, I was hungry. I hadn't eaten all day. I was busy. I ran out in the street and grabbed an empanada off a street vendor and ate it on the way back.
Now you're settled, huh?
I'm okay now. So look at the psychoactive substance which we use is ayahuasca. Now, ayahuasca is the medicine, but it's actually a combination of two plants, the ayahuasca vine and the chacruna leaf, and not just any old leaf. It's the female leaf. So the female leaf is where the DMT is, and the vine is the MOA inhibitor. Well, your body naturally produces DMT. You have a pineal gland which is constantly producing DMT. But your body also produces MOA, which inhibits the DMT, so you're not walking around in a complete psychedelic vision. You're actually functioning like a relatively normal human being, except in your case, of course. So when you combine the two, then you get the medicine ayahuasca. And in the Amazon these days, it's just it's everybody's cutting corners, including most of the tribal people. They'll cook up a batch of ayahuasca in 4 hours. But traditionally it takes 24 to 36 hours to do it. 40 kilos of ayahuasca, 40 kilos of chacruna, 400 liters of water, constantly tended to and cooked will give you 4 liters of the medicine. It's potent.
A lot of plants.
A lot of plant. Now, how did they figure out to do that? Because, there's more plants in the Amazon than there is anywhere else on Earth. In fact, they say in 1 acre of the actual proper jungle, there's more flora and fauna, different types, than in all of North America. That's 1 acre.
Mm-hmm.
So how did they do that? Well, there's various theories. One is the plant spoke to them. Another was there's a lot of trial and error. Whichever you want to adhere to. I wasn't there when they discovered it, although I know the stories that come from it and all that. Perhaps another time. But so we use ayahuasca, as our medicine, plant medicine. And we administer it to people in a ceremony. We call it ceremony, but ceremony is an indigenous word for people getting together and doing what's actually natural. Ceremony is natural for indigenous people. It's not for non-indigenous people. And now in North America and in the world, actually, ceremonies are a big deal. Ooh, I was in ceremony. Ooh. If you talk to a real indigenous people, they go, yeah, well, when weren't you?
Yeah, that's the good question.
That is the good question.
Hmm.
But, seeing as we're living in the world, so we need to, establish certain things. One of the things about ayahuasca is you never drink it in a day. Why? It increases the light fractals 100 times. So you're going blind. You can't see anything. I know. I tried.
Hmm.
Just an experiment one time. I was like, well, I'm never doing that again. Should have listened to my maestro.
Right.
And look at now ceremony in all the medicine traditions, traditional ceremony has a form. There's a form, as you know, we've sat together. There's a form that we adhere to. Now we keep it it's a pretty basic form. It doesn't have to be so ritualistic and all that. But there are certain things that should happen and that need to happen to make it a traditional medicine ceremony. Of course, for Atma, who is actually working in a different way to help people for service, but they're not probably doing ceremonies at this point. I don't know. But that's okay. As long as the bottom line is you're into the service of your fellow human beings to help them. Why? Because they need it. The world's become such a place now that things need to be established and things need to be put in a box so that people can relate to them. So that's what's happened. Now in 2024, there's plenty of medicine boxes around, which is fine. I don't say this to belittle anything or put anything down. I understand. But if you want to adhere to a tradition, then you need to do the things that are required and to be very patient and to take the time. Time is precious, but taking the time to receive something of great value, not only to yourself, but to all your fellow human beings, to really be a humanitarian and work for the good of mankind. Well, if you want to do this within the umbrella of a tradition, it's going to take some time. How I understand that Atma is working is that you're offering a service to people through a clinical situation. This is very good. People can relate to that a lot more than coming to me in Peru. So it's a good thing. And I'm confident that if it's done properly, with the right type of care and the right type of wisdom that's behind it, you're going to help people. So what greater gift is there to mankind than to help mankind? And mankind needs it more than ever. Not that there was a time when it never needed it. Of course, two people lived as the original people. One got sick. Well, they needed it, right? So healing is always needed. But now conditions are different. So the help takes different forms. But today's topic was traditions. So I'll say that if you want to work within a traditional through a lineage, then it has to be real. And you can't be rushing about things. And you can't have any ulterior motive, maintaining an empire. So serving medicine will facilitate you paying your mortgages. This isn't a good enough reason to be serving medicine. But people know the medicine's good, but people don't know what's what. How could they? So people that are doing really well these days. They're traveling all over the world and serving all the time and da 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 da. And it looks good. And some of them even would say Mawa lineage. Look at me, take lots of pictures with this Mawa shaman, use my name to give themselves spreads. They do that. We don't mind. But I'm telling you, that's not the tradition. Tradition is something else. No real maestro declares themselves a maestro. A real maestro waits for his maestro to tell him. No real ayahuasquero declares, I'm going to serve medicine. They wait till their maestro to tell them. Now, over time, you can develop some skills. You can copy. You can teach a monkey how to do all sorts of things. Well, why can't a human being? But just by watching, pick up things. Of course they can, right? You can say all the right things. But it doesn't matter because it's not about saying the right things. They can sing the Icaros. It's not about singing the Icaros. Of course, the Icaros are beautiful. It's about what's behind it. The energy that's actually empowering all this. That's tradition. So we love tradition. I mean, I do. I'm a traditional old guy. Been traditional my whole life. They sometimes said I was the last one to do a traditional Amazonian diet. And diets are different now. Diet, for those of you that don't know, is when we get together and we make observances, commitments, and we sit in ceremony for a pre-designated amount of time with a pre-designated amount of ceremonies. If people come to me in Peru, they usually commit for 40 ceremonies. It's no small thing. Sometimes 10, if I let them off easy. But of course, it's not the army. You can come, and if you want to go, you can go. It's okay. We're not holding anybody. No one has to do this. You have to want it. And then in wanting it, it's advisable to be patient, right? Not be in a big rush. Just wait. Be patient. Be patient. Of course, in today's busy world, it's almost not natural to be patient. It's like go, 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 gotta go, gotta go. Your attention is quite often at least 50% on where you're going to get to next, not where you are. Well, if you can't be 100% attentive to where you are and the energy is present, how can you really, really be effective? You can put on a good show. That's okay, right? But this isn't a show. This is serious business. We're out and out to help mankind. And to do that, it's good to be 100% integral about it. And okay, that tradition. What is tradition? It's integrity. It's honoring the spirits that work with us. It's honoring those that come for help. Honoring it all. That's tradition. And for those that have carried this tradition in whatever way before us, it's just a big thank you. Because if people didn't do it right, we couldn't do it right. It takes a human to transmit to a human. It takes an intelligent human being to receive what's on offer. It takes a spiritual human being to receive what's on offer. Anybody that is working in Atma to help people, well, we have to say they're intelligent. Why? Because they feel the benefits of helping your fellow human beings. Now, it can be a profession. Well, these days, everybody has to be professional, something or other. That's not many old retired guys like me that can just say, well, I don't have a job and I don't really care. But I care deeply. I care deeply about the tradition, about maintaining it and seeing that it goes forward. And to that end, I continue to serve medicine and sit in diet and God willing, it'll continue for some more time. That's how valuable the tradition is and has always been. So today was a bit of a history lesson, but we're making it pertinent to what's happening right now. Because anybody that's listening to this, including you, Iho, you have the option. How are you going to spend your time? It's your choice, and you're free to do so. But just know that whatever you do affects what's next. There's no taking it back. You know, you could run off around the world chasing some illusion of a woman, and then it wasn't what you thought it was.
Mhm.
But all that time went in that. But all these things become opportunities. Never think that, oh, bad mistake. There's no mistakes. Situations that occur and aren't agreeable can be changed. And in the energy that it takes to change the situation, that's an opportunity to move forward. And you're still breathing, right? Breathing? I'm still
Pretty
breathing.
sure. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, check.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
well.
pretty good. Okay.
Yeah.
So then, so then we can still move forward.
Hmm.
And how we do that is our choice. So those that have chosen to offer their time and their energy to be a part of Atma, which is a company which is based on helping people, promoting whatever they're promoting, but promoting is in the spirit of service of help. This is to be supported. That's why I'm doing this video right now. I'm not suggesting that any people watching this video try and find me and want to learn with me. That's not such an easy proposition anyway. But take my words to heart and reflect on what I've just said. Traditions are old, but traditions are very, very pertinent today. And as the modern world speeds up, they'll be even more important.
Hmm.
So, dot your I's, cross your T's, take your time.
Hmm.
Got any questions?
Oh, wow. First, a comment. I'll just say, very powerful to be in the presence of what you're sharing and speaking to. Um, and I just want to say thank you for sharing it so clearly and candidly also, because um, what I really believe, especially being involved with a project like the one that Atma is bringing forward, is that without this type of vulnerability and experience combined, it would be very much like those traditions that were lost with that person
Mhm.
in the old traditions. They would be gone. There's a gap there for so much of the modern world that I've seen, where even those who are looking for or intent on finding um, the power that you're speaking about in these traditions um, bump into many, many illusions before they'd ever even get the sense that what they really need to find is there where you're speaking. So I just want to
Mhm.
say thank you for sharing what you're sharing, because I really believe it's the bridge at this time. It's at the very least, it's a very integral part of that bridge, um, and one that I'm very committed to at least contributing to the building of, if not the crossing over and all of this. So, um,
It better be both because don't waste my time.
touche. Um, I know we have a couple more chats ahead of us to really
Mhm.
kind of follow up on this information. Um, but I think one question that I have regarding traditions, and especially at this point of the conversation, where you're speaking about how what we do now, not only can it not be taken back, but it also is really influencing what comes next. Um, if there was a thought to the traditions that we are kind of creating now or upholding now, projected out in thousands of years, is there something that you would say to the tradition of this age or this period or this generation that's kind of being carved out um, in the world today?
Yeah,
What's
that's a
going
good
on
question.
on today?
That's a good question. Well, you look at it should be practical. Wisdom is a practical wisdom. It's not a concept. It should be practical. So in the world today, which is very quick, and even in Peru, people are stressed out. Of course, in North America, far more.
Hmm.
So this is actually a sickness, the stress with the pressures of daily life. It's monumental. Um, that being said, there should be a sense of ease, of peace that is inherent in your life, because stress creates sickness, and can be very serious sickness that can come. Trauma creates sickness. There is something that happens, and that energetic wheel starts to turn. These days, that wheel's spinning pretty fast, but don't think it's not going to spin faster, because it will. So, as you say, what to do? Well, take your time with it. It's very easy to say don't be affected by it, but that's ridiculous to actually say that. Find something that is agreeable to you in this moment, that you feel nurtures you, and that resonates as truthful, and sit with that. It can be even just a moment sitting in your seat right now, just now in this moment. Or you can extend that moment to 5 minutes or 10 minutes. And, I would say keep your eyes open, especially if you're driving your car in today's world.
Yeah, good one.
but but it's possible. But only a human being can do this. So you have to accept your humanity, and don't get too lost in new age ideas about things. As a traditionalist, I can speak about the new age too, right? The new age is a concept. Normally, it's a concept where they're taking a little bit of this, a little bit of this, a little bit of this, and going, hey, look at that, we got something new.
Right.
But as a traditional medicine person, I would say you'd be much better ahead if you just took that one that really resonated with you and honor it, and do whatever it takes within the limits of the time that you have available to be in that, and keep showing up as much as you can. But you have to honor your body. You have to honor your relations, your parents, your children. For me, I'm a grandfather, my children's children, right? Whoops. Even that, I just spilled a drink. I'm going to have to clean it up. But I get to pick and choose when I'm going to wait till we're finished. So that's a clear example of how to operate, is be present as much as you can be without pretending. Just feel it and take note of things. Look around you. Look at yourself. Watch the signs. If all around you is agitation and stress and anger, see if you're not getting that too. See if you're not already that. If you're already that, take pity on yourself. And know that humans are helpless until they're not. So if you accept your helplessness, people that have trauma have been quite often abused. They were helpless. But that doesn't, just to know that you were helpless and abused doesn't change anything. You have to act towards healing. You have to actively pursue something, but don't be like fanatical about it. Healing isn't on the clock. It's going to take time. There is not one miracle. It's all a miracle.
That's a good note.
Yes. Okay.
And one last comment I have, and even if it's brief, is especially, we started speaking about plants and traditions very centered around plants, but I'm really getting a sense here too that the power of tradition goes far beyond the plants as well, and that there's so much inside of the value of tradition that can support the modern plight of stress and anxiety. And knowing you also, I know you can speak to meditation, which I assume and also know a bit about, also has a deep traditional root. And I'm sure that's one of many other things that we can turn to tradition for help in this collective service to each other. Is there anything that you might say about that?
Well, I mean, you're 100% right. Meditation but all these things, you have to actively do it. It's not just having the idea to do it. You actually have to do it. There's Sufi dancers. They dance traditionally. There's meditators. They sit. There's meditators that sit 10 minutes a day. There's meditators that sit 12 hours a day.
Mhm.
There's meditators that work in an office. There's meditators that live in caves. Regardless of what their position appears to be, they're taking the time to do it. So that's what needs to be done. And yeah, I'm not strictly an advocate of plant medicine. Yeah, sure, I'm a medicine, but I'm also a yogi. I'm also a grandfather. There's medicine in my grandchildren.
Hmm.
There's medicine in love. Love and care is a medicine itself. So, love what you do and do what you love.
Beautiful. I think Papa, that's a beautiful segue for today.
Okay,
To bridge
excellent.
us into what I can only imagine at this point is going to be an even more flourishing conversation tomorrow.
Okay, I look at are we gonna go earlier like our normal time tomorrow? You have anything on for tomorrow?
No, tomorrow I am freed up until the evening.
Okay, let's go at 11 o'clock your time, 12 o'clock my time.
Okay. I'm gonna stop this recording really quick.
Yeah, hopefully you can